Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, your home for heavy strategy, awesome theme, and everything in between. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 130, Graphic Novel Adventure, Season 2. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night podcast. Yes, Every Night is Game Night podcast, not preview series, even though we are going to be talking about a live project on Kickstarter, but this is the regular show. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. We are covering a live Kickstarter, the graphic novel adventure season 2 from Van Ryder Games. But not only that, it's season 2. We've also kind of gone through season 1. I briefly gave my thoughts, and I've invited some friends to talk about the whole project, season 2, season 1, everything involved with these graphic novel fun times. So first of all, we have Wendy Barlow. She is from the Singlehandedly blog. Go ahead and check out her blog and you'll find her written review of the newest preview from season 2, which is Mystery. Wendy, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
And we have Liz.
Hey guys. I know you're so excited. I'm brand new.
I've said Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire so much. It's like, here you go.
This is why I play by myself.
Liz and Wendy are back. If you heard our preview of season 1, this is the crew that got together and chatted about season 1. We were lucky enough to get review copies of Captive from the season 1 set. This time we were again lucky enough, thank you to AJ Porfirio, to get a preview copy of season 2's Mystery, which is a superhero graphic novel. We're going to break down all that stuff. And we're going to break down our reviews of season 1, talk about all this stuff, talk about adventure, talk about graphic novel stuff.
Absolutely.
Always.
Yeah. Let's do it. But before we do that, wanted to do a quick shout out. So we are going to be releasing another kind of mini-sode attached to this episode. AJ was supposed to be on the show, but AJ is at Gamma as we speak. The Gamma trade show. We'll be dropping this episode as he is at Gamma. The trade show, you can't say hi to him, but go ahead and link him on Twitter. Say, hi, you should have been on ENGN. What are you doing? Like your job or something like that. But you will get some AJ. What we're going to do is we are going to run the audio of an interview that Liz did on her channel, beyondsolitaire.net.
Actually, you can go to beyondsolitaire.net is my website blog where my written reviews are. If you go to youtube.com/beyondsolitaire, you'll actually hit my YouTube channel where I recorded a call that AJ and I did last week. All right. So, we talked about just the details of, how do you choose the next graphic novel adventure sets without knowing French? What sorts of things are in store for Van Ryder Games later in the year? How he chooses the books, that are going to go into the series. Last season they had 5 totally different books. This season they have 2 Sherlock Holmes, 2 Pirates, and of course Mystery, which we're going to talk about. So, we discussed the decisions behind that and, how the process is going, that kind of stuff.
All right. So we're going to be running that as a separate episode that is the same time as this episode. So go ahead and check that out if you want to check out Liz and AJ talking about more graphic novels. But we have reviewed Mystery. So we're going to be talking about that. And then we're going to be talking about some bigger picture stuff. And just take a step back. The entire graphic novel thing, if you've never heard of them, let's say you just coming out completely clean, you missed the whole first season, and you're kind of curious about the second season. The graphic novel adventures is basically an adventure book, but in comic book form. They are like the old school choose your own adventure books where instead of going from page to page reading a bunch of text, it's a comic book. So what you're going to be doing is you follow panels. And so you're on the first page and you might say that the panel might say go to panel 210. You flip in the book, go to 210, and then and panel 210, there might be a choice. Okay, we're talking about superheroes. So do you punch the villain or do you try to bribe him with your riches or whatever? So then first choice, go to panel 7, second choice, go to panel 56. And you're making those choices all throughout the thing. So Mystery, we should probably describe Mystery, right? I totally forgot to ask somebody to prepare like a short description.
But how would we keep it a mystery?
Which one of y'all wants to wing it?
I mean, I guess we could just talk about it in general, right? I mean,
Let's talk about it in general. Let's do it.
let's be general.
All right, you spoke up, Wendy. Go ahead.
Man, I feel like everyone just stepped backward. You know, we were all standing in line. You two just stepped back, and there I was.
There you were.
So, like you said, it's the latest edition in season 2 of the graphic novel series. This one takes place in the future in Chicago. I think it's 2025, where
Something like that, yeah.
criminals are all over the place and superheroes are coming out of the woodwork to take them on, and your character you take part as a brand new superhero who's trying to kind of earn his stripes or his cape, if you will, and join an elite group of superheroes. And to do so, you have to earn a certain amount of hero points and make some good decisions, maybe some questionable decisions too along the way, to earn those hero points and join the team.
So yeah, so Wendy's exactly right. I think all three of us have read it. How thoroughly did y'all read it? Did you read it like cover to cover every single panel, or go through it a couple times? How did you guys approach that?
I flipped through it and looked at the whole thing. I can't say that I read every single panel. One of the first things I found with this particular book over the one that we did before was that this one was much more involved and much longer for me. I don't know if you guys found that one also. With Captive, I was able to play through in like one evening. This, I actually had to put it aside and do it over a couple of nights because there was just so much going on.
Yeah, although I'd say that's in a good way. I've been through it once,
absolutely.
but I have not done my like obsessive. I do this thing where I will actually record what panels lead to where and like what the little options are and go back. It's like I create my own little fact for it, you know?
You're completely insane. That is crazy.
Yeah, I know.
So is anybody else getting like the vision of her down in a basement with like yarn stretched across her walls going from here to here to here? Is anybody else getting that graphic in their head?
Post-its. That's what I'm seeing. Post-its.
I don't have to get the graphic in my head. It's right here in front of me.
Ding, there's the yarn, right?
But no, I like this one a lot. Actually, I think it feels less on the rails than Captive did. Does that make sense? It feels a lot more like, remember I said that Captive felt like a point and click and that was good? I feel like Mystery gives me even more of that feeling. Like the way that you start kind of presents the first puzzle to you rather than being like, oh, here's the first thing to do. You got to do that. Like the goals are emergent as you explore.
Yeah, I did feel the Captive was a little more leading. Like it kind of led you down certain corridors that it wanted you to go to further the story. This was a lot more open-ended.
At the same time, I felt like so what Captive did was it kind of led you down that main corridor, but it had like really well hidden side cubbies. And the side cubbies were helpful. Like if you went down 1 or 2 correct side cubbies, you were really rewarded at the end. So like if you just went straight through, you probably get the crappy ending in Captive. But if you found the right cubby and found the right item, you could get a better ending. Here, you know, so like here, I felt like the choices were a little bit like the numbers, just the superhero motif led itself to the numbers kind of popping out a bit more. You don't have to like stare 50, you know, like in Captive, you have to like kind of stare at the book. So here, the numbers were nice and bright, and it was just a question of, you know, I knew kind of where to go, but there were always multiple ways to go. Always multiple ways to level up, like you were describing before. It wasn't just like, okay, am I going to happen to find the one item that lets me do the better thing? Like, all right, I can do this a couple of ways, and it might not work so bad. So I felt it was a little bit more open and more whimsical. Some people like the kind of gritty feeling of Captive, or like some of the other books, like, you know, Sherlock Holmes had like, you know, had its own vibe. This was definitely kind of a wide open, you know, Rock'em Sock'em Sentinels of the Multiverse vibe. And that I felt like it was really cool. And I felt like the mechanics, the way you describe them, lent itself to that kind of more open-ended feeling.
Well, I also like that once you unlocked certain things in the game, like I think earlier when we were talking about this before the podcast, you mentioned something about, I know there's something going on with that ringing phone. Right. You know, once you unlocked what's going on with that ringing phone, everything just kind of opened up.
Oh, we shouldn't spoil anything.
No, I'm just vaguely talking about the ringing phone. But
okay,
no,
that is about as spoilery as we're gonna get. There is a phone. Right. It's very obvious, guys. You open the first book, and it's one of those things where it's like it's not really. It doesn't like leap out at you like, okay, this must be it. But eventually you're gonna run into kind of a way to approach that, and it's like, oh, this is what this is all about, and it unlocks a whole bunch of other stuff. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that just kind of like I was playing through and it was great, and it had a lot of things to do, but then once that added like another layer to it, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. I also actually liked the way that the book began, since I don't want to talk about later stage stuff too much.
Right.
What I really loved was that you don't even really get to start the adventure without wandering around to various locations first and then trying to, pick up some experience points and kind of get yourself bulked up for the adventure. And I liked the way that the game kind of teaches itself to you that way.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of like rule splash.
No, not at all. Everything that you need to know is taught as you go. Also, may I just say that having super rich be a superpower is hilarious, and I love it.
You can do so much with it.
Yeah.
So we should probably talk about that then. There's superhero points that you get power points that you can allocate in the beginning of the game, and everybody starts with 2, and the powers that you can allocate it to are flight, strength, super rich, and I think super senses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
something like that.
So you can choose those, and then they later on can unlock things depending upon how many points you have in each of those categories. It helps with your choices.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of cool right out of the gate, building your character to decide what you want, which right out of the gate, it limited some of the things that you could do depending upon what you chose.
Mm-hmm.
My first playthrough, I didn't choose too wisely, and I had to, find alternate ways to get what I needed to get there. I also like that right there on that front map page, which is no spoilery because everyone gets that map page. It gives you an option to, if you're getting stuck,
Mm-hmm.
to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did choose unwisely, there was an option to kind of backtrack and help yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like that little kind of get out of jail free card that they included as well.
I think this was like you're hearing it. There's a lot of positive. We really enjoy it. I don't think we would have agreed to reviewing the second season if we didn't enjoy the first season.
Right.
So already predisposed to liking it. So, but I think that it is important to kind of point out some, I guess, difficulties that I had in particular. I wanted to get your girls' response, and it wasn't so much with mystery. Like mystery is what it is. Like it's like we were talking about. It's superheroes. It has a different vibe to it, but it has the same kind of guts of the main games. It's not different than the main games. It's very kind of down the center in terms of mechanical. It's not trying to do anything crazy. Mm-hmm. So whatever criticism I have is basically like stuff that I have of the entire series, and there's 2 that leap out at me. Okay. So one is the way that the comic book kind of plays out. So you have this thing, and how I describe you hop from panel to panel. You go from 1 to 284, and you're always kind of flipping the pages, which, whatever, you're holding this book. It's kind of awkward. It has to be hardcover. Sorry, increases the expense, but it has to be hardcover to take that pounding. But what happens is you can spoil yourself really hard on what's coming. While as you're flipping through. And in this particular book, I found it was a little bit frustrating because of the things that happen, ... spoiler. But they all have that problem of like, you're going to flip through and then you're going to like glance at another panel and see the big bad monster leaping out. And meanwhile, you've just entered the door. You're not going to see that monster for another 3 hours. But it is not surprising anymore. So I don't know how you ladies kind of felt about that of, you have to do stupid stuff, like play that mental trick of like, oh, I'm only going to look at that panel. I'm not going to look at anything else. I don't know. I found that very difficult and very kind of like, why am I doing this type thing,
Yeah, I agree that there were times when you did see something that, maybe you couldn't see. But for me, that kind of drew me to more of how can I get there? That's really cool. How do I get there? How do I get to that particular panel and see that particular thing for myself and actually get to the story behind that? So for that was a little motivating for me. I didn't find it too spoilery for me. For me, it was more like I wanted to find the path to get to that one. So that didn't really bother me all that much. But I completely see where you're coming from, that if you put too much thought into it, like, oh my gosh, look at that. Because it does jump around quite a bit. And, right from the beginning, you could go to a page that might link you to something that, is pretty spoilery.
Yeah, I am profoundly insensitive to most spoilers. They just don't really bother me. Like,
you're watching Game of Thrones, you don't care that George Martin hasn't finished the books, whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm really like that. because for me, like I'll enjoy the ride anyway. I get just as excited. I know that for some people that really bothers them, but not so much for me. I don't really know why that is, but I find that sometimes I can appreciate a story arc more if I know that I'm going somewhere. Also, actually, like seeing the more exciting stuff in the early stages of the game where I felt like I was grinding out those early points was sort of comforting. It's like, oh, it's gonna really open up. It's worth it. Because let me tell you, I made some definite errors in my early wanderings around the book and totally lost the points and drank things I shouldn't drink and
got a little overzealous.
Yeah. and there were natural consequences for my stupid actions.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually brought up the second criticism, which is that I thought of, which is actually a little bit more profound for me, anyway. So there were instances where, let's say, and it happens in this book, and it also happens in a bunch of the other books. So you might come up against a table, and the table has like 3 things to either eat or drink or whatever. It's like, okay, if you want to drink this, pay panel 7. If you want to drink that one, panel 16. Drink that one, panel 364. So you just have 3 different options over there, and you don't really encounter anything in the book that leads you to do whatever those things are. And one of them is clearly good and 2 of them are bad or whatever it is. So there's nothing in the main flow of the game that tells you what's good or bad. So you just kind of like, I don't know. And you might completely mess yourself up. Like in that particular case, nothing terrible happens, but there's a lot of instances in the book where you're going through and it looks like it'll present you with a choice and it looks like it might be a good idea. You don't really know. You don't know the context of it. You turn the page and it's terrible. And it's like, oh, well, how am I supposed to know that? So I feel like that's good for little kids. Like, oh, you're on an adventure. Yay, this is great. But if I'm a gamer and I want to get some serious gaming fun out of it, then I almost I want my choices to matter. If I'm going to present with a choice like that, I want it to be really stupid. That's something I really missed, as opposed to just some random crap happening. So, and certain points, you could really just mess up without having to done anything really. You're just kind of going through and trying to make the best choices. So I don't know if am I being too much of a gamer by saying that?
No, I think that is a fair criticism because in the game, and I don't consider this a spoiler, you need to reach certain levels of points to level up. And there are actions in the game that you can take where you lose 10 points. But that 10 points, it's very hard to find, the 10 points you needed to make it to the next level and 10 points to replace the ones that you just lost. Right. Because once you collect points somewhere, it's like, oh, you can't return to this location again. Mm-hmm. You can't do this action that got you points again. And so, it can be frustrating to feel like, oh, I'm so close to this next level. I've almost made it and I can go to this new location. And, if you're playing by the rules and you lose those points, it's like, God, you get really irritated.
I was like, no.
But on the flip side,
I have to grind out these levels or something.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, once you've reached your plateau, you cannot level down. So if you were at 100, let's say 100 hit points and you lost 20, you wouldn't go down to 90 and lose your level. So on the flip side, they did kind of build that in to decrease some of the frustration. But I do agree that there were times when, especially in the beginning of the adventure, where it was hard to come by some of the HP, the hero points at the beginning of the game. And if you didn't get them all, you had very little wiggle room to lose any. And there were times when I was staring at my decisions for a long time thinking, okay, what could go wrong if I did this? If I chose to use my flight as opposed to my super senses, what could go wrong? Because I was really thinking about how could I lose my hero points. So they were very precious in the beginning of the game. I found them a little easier the more we progressed in the game to get more hero points because there was just more places to go. Right. But in the beginning, it was kind of hard to get those initial ones to get you going.
Yeah, and it isn't the result of cleverness. I'll take hit point loss if I was dumb. Mm-hmm. There's certain points where it's like, okay, if I think about it, that was pretty dumb. If a guy's 500 pounds, rippling with muscle, and he challenges me to a wrestling match, then I'm probably gonna lose. So don't do that. But at some points it just kind of pulls a rug out from under you, and it's not just this book. I think all of them have that element of a, making uninformed choices and kind of boxing you into a corner. And so what happens? Either you get set back to the beginning because either you hit an end point or your stat level is such that you can't really progress, which means you have to either start over or whatever. Or you mentioned before about rules.
You bend the rules a little bit.
You might want to bend.
Oh, I have no shame about it. I'll just be like, okay, whatever.
So then the question, okay, so yeah, I think all of us, we all cheat. It just like kind of bend the rules a little bit. So then the question becomes, what's the point? You know, like, does this become not a game anymore, not something that is going to appeal to a gamer, and just kind of like an experience that you have? And that is, hey, look, I have nothing against experiences. They're fun. You know, I personally really enjoy this, but I can see like a gamer, and Van Ryder Games, a game company, and they have, thematic games and they have games for gamers. So I could see someone getting frustrated on that end of like, okay, well, my choice didn't matter. I'd have to cheat in order to progress and whatever.
Yeah, but could you see the same thing about dice? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure that that's like a totally fair direction to push it in, because there's so many things. Like, you've never re-rolled a die playing a solo game? Ever?
Never.
Never, Liz, you dirty cheater, never.
Hey, at least I'm not...
I can't even talk to you anymore. Can't even.
That's it.
I can't even be associated with you anymore.
Wendy, let's go make our own podcast. Let's go.
Bye.
You are stigmatized.
Here you come.
Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, man. Hey, at least I'm not paying someone to take my kids' SATs.
Oh my God! Topical.
But anyone want to know, I will be paid to roll dice for you. I will accept that.
Absolutely.
For those of you who don't know, there was just this week a little bit of a conspiracy, I guess you call it, like a conspiracy for scandal. A couple of actresses or actors and a bunch of other people were paying for their kids to get to go into the SATs. Like if those kids were reading the graphic novel adventures, they would just breeze on through.
Right? No problem.
They don't care. So yeah, I mean, the cheating thing, and I think that's probably a larger conversation among solo gamers anyway. We've never done that episode, and I know solo gamers think about it and talk about it a lot because there's no one around. Who's gonna see if I turn if this particular die doesn't go my way? But in this in particular, like there's no other real game there. In a lot of cases, you'll quote unquote cheat, but it's like one roll among like 50. Or like a particularly bad streak or something like that. Here, if you nudge yourself a certain way, it just doesn't, there's no more game anymore. And it's quote unquote just an experience. I mean, I guess I guess you guys are okay with that. I guess I was hoping for more. I guess that's where I'm going to land. There's no reason to put a little bit more into these things and make them really reward cleverness as opposed to kind of have these more adventure elements. Or maybe that's just my own expectation.
I could agree. I prefer a puzzle over random. I would prefer to know that I succeeded in this because I put the thought into it, and came to a logical conclusion.
Well, some of these
but then
are
if you just think about it, though, life can be random. Life is just random anyway. Even if you put the most logical thought into a real life decision, it could go haywire just because that's life. So I guess that's how that gets me through. Just equating it to real life, and real life is just unpredictable too. Sometimes you can make all the best decision and still have a crappy outcome.
I thought Mystery was a fun ride, and I was really happy with that. But I also do think, there's 2 more Sherlock Holmes ones coming out too, and those are very puzzly. So if you want the full-on clever puzzle, there's also that for you in this series.
Yes,
and that's something that I do think is cool about it. Or like Loop Guru had a combat system, right? So there's all those. Each of those graphic novel adventures does have a different vibe. So Captive and Mystery, I think, are the most of that nature, right? What you're talking about. But
choose your own adventure, old school, yeah.
Right, something like Your Town, where you're building out a town, or again, mostly the Sherlock Holmes ones, right? Which is apparently a pretty deep. Based on my interview with AJ, there's going to be a lot of those that could become available over time. Mm-hmm. Those are very puzzly, and I think that some people don't like puzzles that are that puzzly either. I think there's something in the series for everybody.
That's another thing that's great about these is that they're all the same but different. So they're all going to give you a different experience based on what you're looking for. And I think when it's a subject that's a superhero kind of subject, I think it's a little more light and a little more random than something like you said, like a Sherlock Holmes, where you expect it to be puzzly and thinky.
Yeah.
Speaking of one thing we didn't mention at the outset, and I know it's not set up now, so we can't comment on it too much, but the mystery game happened to come with a bunch of QR codes that you could scan and go to the Van Ryder website and get kind of background on some of the things that are happening, some of the characters, some of the locations.
Actually, they worked for me.
Yeah, I love
some of them are in French.
Yes.
Oh no,
I read French, so that was fine.
Some of mine were in English. I was able to read a bunch of them, so it was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, they were mixed. Once I saw the French, I'm like, nope, not for me.
I still tried. I gave it the college try. But
there you go.
that was really cool in the fact that who doesn't love a good backstory on some of these characters, When you bump into a character and they got a little QR code and you scan it and you get a little backstory on them. I thought that was really cool, especially since I used to read comic books and I was kind of a little comic book nerd back in the day, or maybe still now. And it was just kind of cool to get those little stories and things like that. And even the backstories on like the buildings that you went into, some of them had little backstories and things like that. Totally unrelated. And you didn't even need it. You didn't even need to do it to progress in the book. It was just like a little extra. It was like a little gift.
Yeah. I like some of the humor in it too. So one thing I really like about Mystery as opposed to something like Captain, right, which is a lot grittier, Mystery is funny. And some of the QR codes do have some like extra jokey stuff in there that just really delighted me. And it's kind of got that Pixar vibe or, this Disney movie vibe where most of the humor is, super innocent. And then there's like the occasional joke in there that a kid would miss, but an adult wouldn't.
And I think I mentioned it. Like I mentioned it because it made me think of Chronicles of Crime, where it had the QR code and it actually was essential to solve the case or the mystery or whatever. I could totally see these graphic novels, and I don't know if the Sherlock Holmes does it here, but I could totally see having future case stuff or having future, opportunities for cleverness and, adventure come through those QR codes. So it's definitely opening up a whole new kind of area for that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Like in a Sherlock Holmes, scanning a QR code and having it launch like a puzzle right there on your phone that you could puzzle through. That might be kind of cool.
That'd be awesome.
Manchester really Madness style. Oh yeah, take that finger puzzle.
Yes.
Take that finger puzzle, Mr. Brute Man with 2 intelligence. Don't get me started.
But I think it's entirely possible because, mystery is clearly new. Like there are pop culture references in mystery. Yeah. This was written in the last couple years. And so, I think that as these series, this is a new series. They're clearly developing new stuff of Akaka editions that we could get access to through Van Ryder. So even if the ones that we see for Sherlock Holmes don't have them now, there's no reason they couldn't in a future part of the line, which is also interesting.
Right, maybe season 3.
Yeah, we're definitely going to keep on getting them. The Kickstarter is funded. This is, a preview / analysis and everything of a successful project. And, the last project funded really well. This one's doing really well. I think we're just going to get more and more and more of these. And to be honest with you, like the series can go anywhere. I think that's kind of what I'm getting from the conversation that, if you expect a certain thing, then there's something there for you. Like if you expect that cleverness and that case solving, whatever, that's there. If you expect like a rock'em sock'em good time, that's there. If you expect like kind of mystery adventure, if you expect, lighthearted or gritty or all this stuff, it's all kind of there. They're not for everybody. They're definitely, it's for the person who is nostalgic for comic books, like Wendy was mentioning. And Wendy, we're both the same age, so I imagine we were both kids when like during the golden age of comics of like X-Men and Infinity Gauntlet and
Wolverine. Oh, when he was still alive. Remember when Wolverine was alive?
They were all still alive, all the good ones, all the classic ones. So it's for us. It may not be for everybody, but if that at all tickles your fancy, we would definitely. I think all 3 of us would recommend this season 2 package of the graphic novel adventures.
Absolutely.
I was backer number 2. I really like these.
Overachiever much.
I know.
Well, actually, I was looking for the link to like put into my Kickstarter previews, so I just kind of happened that way. But I definitely don't think that these are perfect. I completely hear the criticisms that you were having, Jason, and also, frankly, I really hope the bindings are better on the second season because my first season ones were not sturdy. The pages are good, but the bindings aren't. To be real. And, I'm hoping for continued improvement on that front. And, I definitely want to continue seeing variety and growth. Like, I don't necessarily want endless graphic novel seasons of the same thing, if that makes sense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I do like them a lot.
I like the different art style that's across all the different graphic novels. I like the different content. I like the portability of it too. Just grab one and go wherever. It's got so much working for it, and it's got so many places it can go to. There's really nowhere that Van Ryder's got a lot that they can do with these things, and they can continue to. And the fact that they continue with the second season and hopefully will do more, that's really encouraging.
So, of course, 2 teachers who have infinite days off and vacation days are going to remark about portability.
Yeah, when I go to the beach, I got to take it with me. Next week when I'm on spring break.
I'm so jealous. Anyway, so that was the graphic novel adventure season 2. Hopefully we gave you a good sense for what's in there, what we love and what we could think are improved. And you can always go, and if you wanted to kind of read through a little bit more or see some video or something like that, head over to Beyond Solitaire blog, head over to Singlehandedly blog. These fine ladies have you covered. Okay, so we wanted to throw in a little bit of extra for people who wanted a little bit more. Let's just talk about adventure. Ladies, you're adventure fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. What is your favorite adventure anything in geekdom? A favorite video? If it could be a video game, a comic book, a regular book. What is your favorite adventure that people should be seeking out?
I don't know if I could pick just one, so I'm gonna let Liz handle that one first while I try to narrow it down.
This is gonna be our mainstream one, right, Jason?
Our what?
Our mainstream one.
Oh, what do you mean?
You'd ask for something mainstream and then something off the beaten path?
Yeah, this is the mainstream one, yeah.
All right, so for mainstream,
it doesn't have to be mainstream, just your favorite one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I think of adventure, honestly, you think back to your childhood and the things that really opened up your imaginative world that were really, really exciting for you. And honestly, I'm still crazy about Ocarina of Time. I really am.
Yeah.
The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, because, all those different locations open up and there's all those little mysteries that you can discover across the whole world. And it's not just about the temples, right? It's about talking to everybody in the town, solving all the little puzzles, trying to be at places in the daytime and in the nighttime, and really putting it together. Even those little pieces of dialogue are like, oh, I wish I had X thing. And then later you find it and you're like, yes! That was an amazing gaming experience for me. And I still have these really intense emotions that are associated with scenery from that game, with music from that game. And, I know that Breath of the Wild is an amazing achievement, but nothing's ever going to feel the way that Ocarina of Time felt for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good choice. That's really, really good. Anything in the Zelda universe, I could get behind. I'm a huge Zelda fan, and that's one of the first video games I ever played, and that kind of drew me into video games. There was a kid up the street who had it. He had the gold Nintendo cartridge and everything. It was the coolest thing ever, and so that kind of drew me into video games, and I still play them to this day, and just anything Zelda. It just immediately draws you in. I mean, just equipping his little, he gets the sword. That first moment when you play your first Zelda game and he gets his sword, you're just like, what? And he lofts it up above his head, and it's got the music, and it just automatically just drags you into that game, and you're like, yes, I have a sword. Oh, I have a shield now. Oh my gosh. And you got your little green cap flowing behind you as you're walking. There are just so many iconic images from that whole series that just totally brought me along the path to video games completely in my childhood.
Could I admit something to you, ladies?
Don't even tell me you've never played.
You've
Zelda
not
game.
played it.
I will hang up on you right now. I will hang up on you right now.
You're not even re-rolling a die. You have missed a major life experience, sir.
I think you just both of us are angry now.
Let's go have our own podcast, Wendy.
Loving Link.
When I was a young lad in the early 80s, late 80s, or whatever it was, my family went for the Sega Master System, not the Nintendo Entertainment System. and then I went to Genesis. These platforms did not have Zelda, so my childhood is bereft of all these adventures.
This is the sound of me weeping for your childhood.
This is
weeping.
I was repping so hard for the Master System. Like, it was so terrible. I had no games on it, like 5 games. But I was like, no, this is my system. Alex Kidd and whatever.
Did not back a winner. Did not back a winner.
I did the Genesis was great though. The
Genesis was great. I had both.
Yeah,
I had both.
There's no question. Yeah.
Both, but
no, did you think of one yet?
Huh?
Did you think of one yet? Or you're gonna cop out and say Zelda?
I'm gonna go with the whole Zelda experience, but if we're gonna go with video games, there was also Final Fantasy. The whole Final Fantasy, just pick one. Just pick one in that. More newer for me, I love Kingdom Hearts. Just really, really like Kingdom Hearts. I love the blending because I'm a big Disney fan. I love the blending of Disney and adventure and things like that too. So I'm gonna go with those.
I'm gonna go classic WoW.
So let me guess. Sonic what?
Well, actually, no. Classic WoW. World of Warcraft.
Oh, okay. Thought you meant.
I say classic WoW because what WoW did, and they kind of went away from this as like they marketed towards the casuals. But when they first released the classic WoW, they had all of these buried adventure chains that took you all over the world. You had to go on raids. You had to go on all the dungeons. Like, there was this big mega quest in classic WoW at level 60 to get, I think it was some scepter that opened up the very, very last tomb. For like some, the ancient Egyptian tomb thing, and it took you to all over the place, and you had all this lore, and you had to swim out into the middle of nowhere, and I love just like that. I love the getting lost, and I love that kind of snaking, multi-part thing, and I mean, classic WoW just had so much more to it, and they're re-releasing it. I don't know if they're releasing it with the different changes that have happened, but I'm tempted. I'm like, oh man, I might want to flash back to 10 years ago, before I had a wife and kids.
I don't know. Are you ready to make your wife into a WoW widow?
Oh, that'd be tough. I wouldn't have a wife. I just wouldn't. This is not going to happen. So I also wanted to ask you ladies, so there was one that's, the popular one. What is a adventure, again, video game, comic book? We mostly went to video games because they're so visual, but I think there's other medium where that adventure punch kind of gets delivered pretty good. What is a adventure that is kind of under the radar that you think that people should know about that maybe isn't getting as much pub as it deserves? I'll go first, and I just finished Escape Tales: The Awakening. This is from Board and Dice. It's an escape room system, but it actually had story, and it was like, what? These should have had story the entire time. You go to I like Unlock and I like Eggs and everything. They're silly. There's no story whatsoever. This is the bag of puzzles, which is okay, I guess. But there's so much space in the escape room thing to have a real story. And in this one, you're I won't spoil it too much, but there's a hospital, there's a guy in a coma and everything, blah, dot, dot, dot. But it actually unfolded and folded a whole thing. And I kind of get it. If you release them without story, then you can do more. So they're always pumping out exit games. I mean, there's 9, 12, there's a whole bunch of them. And these are more crafted experiences. But I definitely really totally recommend diving into that more boutique experience. And I usually don't love the escape room games. I like them, but not love them. This one I really liked. So please go ahead and check that out. That is Escape Tales: The Awakening. You've at least heard of these, right?
Mm-hmm. I've heard, but I haven't played them.
Check this one out, and I hope they make more.
I have to say, a game that I've really enjoyed recently that's kind of got an adventure kind of feel was Escape the Dark Castle. I don't know if you guys have played that one.
Yeah.
I really just like the deck and the turning of the cards is kind of like turning the pages in a book. And with the last Kickstarter that they did, they also released a soundtrack with it. That you can play in the background that just really goes with the theme of everything if you're really getting the ambiance. They also released some books that give you background on the characters that you're playing, like how they got into the castle. So for those of you that don't know, Escape the Dark Castle, you're playing as a prisoner that is escaping the Dark Castle. And so you're trying to get out and eventually face the last boss to actually get out and escape the castle that's trying to kill you. But they released this book, and it's in a PDF form too, where it just tells the story of how each character got into the castle in the first place, which kind of is really cool. And then you play through the game and you get out, and they even have, I think they even did a book on the ultimate bad guy at the end, the big baddie, and what their story is also. So you combine all of that with the soundtrack and the story that's being told as you're playing the game, and it just really became very immersive for me. And my daughter loves this game too. And she just loves playing through this game. And so it's something we can play together, and we can kind of make our own little story around it. So it feels very, very interesting for the two of us. And even solo, it's even a great solo game.
Yeah, my students love that one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it
a good one.
old?
It's fun.
No,
not at all. It's new, but it has a really old school feel to it.
Yeah, it's black
it looks
and white,
like ancient.
gritty. Yeah, it looks like it's made in the 80s. It's got and that was a big criticism a lot of people had, was that the artwork, a lot of people didn't like. For me, they purposely made it look like a game from the 80s. And if you've ever seen, people who are not that old, games from the 80s, they had a certain look about them. They had a certain artwork. It had a certain style to them. And it almost is reminiscent of that. And it looks like that's what they went for. That's what they tried for. So everything's black and white, gritty and thick, dark lines and things like that. And so it's really cool. And it's kind of dice based also. Each character has their own special die that has, special powers or special certain number of different what do they call, resources on them and things like that. And it's really cool. It's something that I'm really happy that I got into.
All right, Liz, what do you got for us?
All right, so I'm not sure how off the beaten path you wanted. So I thought about something that I'm not even sure exists anymore.
It's this game that she created in her basement 10 years ago.
It's this old
The best game ever.
It's this old text game that I used to play on the computer where you are talking to a dragon named Mar, M-A-U-R, and you try to keep the conversation going as long as you can before the dragon gets fed up with you and kills you. And you can
ask about this. Isn't this the premise to War Games or something like that?
I don't know. I just know that as a kid on my early internet days, and I didn't really know I was looking at that, I discovered it, and I just played it so much. I never won, if it was even possible. But I remember asking all these different questions and going down these different paths and getting these different responses, and it was so neat. And I would really like to see something like that again. If you want more mainstream, though, I would definitely say read the Redwall books if you haven't. I know that they're kind of for kids, but those Brian Jacques Redwall books are so awesome. They're about these animals that have an abbey, and there's all these cute little badgers and mice and hares and all these different animals that are part of this conglomerate of animal societies, and they have issues with foxes and stoats and rats. But there's all these great adventure tales, especially in the earlier books in the series. I think that The Bellmaker was probably my very favorite one.
Yeah, there are a lot of books in that series, aren't there?
Yeah, I used to read them obsessively, and then they kind of all, I must confess, became the same book, after the first set.
Mm-hmm.
But, up through Bellmaker, at least, it was great.
What is this? The Redwall?
It's called Redwall. Yeah, and some people know this. This is a cartoon, too, they've tried to make. But have you ever read Watership Down?
Yes.
Nope.
Okay, so...
Jason.
What?
Jason.
Okay.
Jason.
The way you said Jason, I had flashbacks to my wife just chiding me.
All right, so Watership Down's another book about anthropomorphic animals who have lives and talk and stuff. But Redwall is a totally different series, but it's also about animals who basically act like people, but they're animals. And
there's a lot of books. I want to say 20-something books.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of lore, and you get to know these sort of important characters that become part of the history of the Abbey, but their spirits appear to give messages to future generations. It's just great. I love it. And I kind of want to read it again now that I've started talking about it.
Yeah, I'm I wonder if I have that somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I read those books obsessively when I was younger, and, they were a blueprint for my later obsession with fantasy books.
Mm-hmm.
But they're good.
Right.
I think they're good for adults, too.
All right, so hopefully we gave you guys lots of suggestions for adventure and for, escapism, which is the reason why we love this stuff so much. Thank you very much, ladies. Do not be strangers. You are welcome back on Every Night is Game Night anytime.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
It's always good to be here.
That's going to do it for another episode of Every Night is Game Night. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Liz and Wendy. Please hop over to their blogs to check out their previews. I have included links in the show notes as well as link to the Kickstarter page. I love the graphic novel adventures. I think that's pretty clear from the episode. Hope you enjoyed this combined preview / critical analysis and everything that you hopefully come to expect from Every Night is Game Night. If you want to get in touch with the show, there are a lot of ways to do so. Every Night is Game Night Facebook group is a principal way. Every once in a while, I will post discussion questions. Every time we have a discussion question, I've been trying to be pretty good about this. It will be posted ahead of time in the Facebook group, but I'm going to yank some comments from there and from other places as well. So please go check that out. ENGN_podcast on Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like. All sorts of places that you can find us. But the best thing that you can do, the best way that you can help the show, please give us a rating, 5 stars or however many you think we deserve over on the iTunes store in particular, but anywhere that you can rate podcasts. All right, so I will see you guys next week. Until then, as Anthony would say, let's grab a solo game off of that shelf and make every night a game night.